Or just get a report. All right, I have 6:59. I'll call to order this meeting of the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February 21st, 2017. And when you're ready, could you please take the roll?
Bromby,
Here.
Malat,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Rule,
Here.
Tome,
Here.
Traxler.
Here.
This meeting has been noticed appropriately according to state statutes. Up next, we need to approve the agenda. I did talk to Patrick, or he emailed me earlier about item number 9, that can be tabled for this evening. I don't know if we want to table that, maybe just ask for an update from staff upon, where things are right now, but probably not going to be any action on that this evening. With that, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda unless there's any other alterations or deletions.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Citizen comments on agenda items. We have Ruth Hermanson signed up tonight to talk about the community trails plat. Ruth, if you wanted to come up to the podium and speak to the council.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Hermanson. Thank you for listening. I live at 986 Warner Street. It is the last street on the west side of town. We see every sunset. It's a beautiful area. There's a retention pond, wildlife, different things. It's really pretty special. I do see cars going up by Zion School to watch the sunset. When I was here a couple weeks ago and heard about the community trails project kind of coming up, again, I guess it goes way back. I remember my mother speaking about when the Water and Light needed a place to go and they built out there. My mom said, well, there was always promised a park on this side of town, and we never got one. And I've talked to my neighbors, and I'm working on taking out a petition to show that there would be, I believe, strong interest in an area. It'd be also kind of nice to have some sort of arboretum that maybe the schools and other place community people could enjoy or promote nature, and it's kind of a nice place to see the kind of the sky wide open, see the horizon. So I'm just letting you know, I do know there is community interest in it.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, then we have department reports in our packet, written reports only. Any questions on those reports? Seeing none, move on to number 6, consider resolution for DNR grant funds for lead laterals. Some information in our packets about this. Sounds like the Water and Light Commission has been hard at work on this item. I've talked to Eric Anthon briefly about this, and this is something that I'm very happy to learn about. Essentially, it looks like there's going to be some grants funding available for the James Street reconstruction this year for lead lateral replacement. Anybody have any specific questions about this? Eric's here if you have questions.
I just have a couple of curious questions more than anything for you, Eric. For the amount of the grant, do you know about how many lead laterals or how many households that would maybe take care of?
Well,
It's probably not one size fits all. So.
no, and that's just it. We've identified 30 lead laterals that are within the James Street corridor that we're going to replace. I mean, just kind of back of the napkin, we're probably looking at, north of $100,000 to get those replaced. There's a $300,000 grant that we applied for and did receive. Once we close on that loan, it's not really a loan. Once we close on the grant, we'll have 3 years to use those funds up. So that opens up whatever we don't use this year for the next 2 years, whatever street projects may come up. If there's lead laterals, we can then offer those funds to, our customers that are on those streets.
And that's how we'll prioritize the spending is basically, if we're in an area doing a big project, we'll look to expend the grant monies then.
Right, or we can open it up. We've, since we've been in this, since I've been at the utility and prior to that, they've been, since about the early 90s, been tracking or trying to track where these lead laterals are. There's been other areas throughout the city where we've replaced the utility portion, so from the water main to the curb stop. We do have a log where people, that we kept a record, where people didn't replace, from the curb stop into their house. There's been interest, I've had people call already and say, if there are funds available, once you get done with James Street, sign me up. And I'm like, well, we'll start a list and work on that.
Okay. So beyond, outside of the scope of a major, or major project, then you guys will have to determine later how you might prioritize that?
Right, and I think it goes hand in hand, like you said, if whatever street project is chosen for 18, we look at those, offer that up, and then depending on, how we do that, it would just be a matter of prioritizing where to spend the rest of the funds. Within the 3 years, we definitely don't want to leave anything on the table.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
you bet. Just so, for knowledge of the council, I did request a draft agreement from the DNR for the principal forgiveness. That obviously, once we get further down the road, I'll have Attorney Johnson review that for the Water and Light Commission and for the council before it's signed.
I had a question, Eric.
Sure.
Are there any financial restrictions on this? Is it income-based? Is this open just for residential properties or commercial properties, or are there any?
Right now, the DNR's tagline is, let's get the lead out. All right, so they're really pushing water utilities to do everything they can. Commercial properties, residential properties. We had to initially qualify for this as a community. Generally, my history since I've been with Water and Light is we haven't received grants because of our median household income. There was other questions, other things that benefited us when we did apply for this grant. MHI was a factor, but because we had homes where we had lead laterals in there that we had identified in the past, we were qualified. So.
Great. Andy, did you have a question?
Yeah. Can someone contact Water and Light and to see if they might have a lead lateral?
Absolutely. I mean, if there's any question out there, what we can do is we can send one of our water operators over to any resident's house. They'd have to look in the basement near where the water meter comes in, and we can identify if it's a lead lateral.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We'd do that. I mean, we'd gladly do that just as a service because we want to do the right thing for our customers and identify all those areas. So.
Any other questions? So this is basically just the first step of adopting this resolution to
Right.
start the whole process.
Right, so if this moves forward and goes to the council at the next meeting, I'll get Ann an electronic copy. Obviously she can format that on the city letterhead, and then it needs the mayor and the city clerk's signature. The DNR is gonna require that, even though the water utility is doing the doing the heavy work on it. They wanna see the signatures from the mayor and the city clerk and have the blessing of the council.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we comfortable bringing this forward to the next regular meeting?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and in the meantime, if there are further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me.
Thanks for all the work that you've done on this to get the
Yeah.
the funding here.
You bet.
Thank you. All right, then on to number 7, which is consider request of Platinum Communities for second driveway access for 570 River Road. We've got the application in our packet. This is, I'm guessing, for the commercial property that's out there?
Yeah, that's for the Larson House.
Okay.
They're planning their expansion.
Are there any concerns besides what we've gotten in our packet?
Not that-
Jason, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Council Mayor, I just wanted to make clarification on this. It's actually for the third driveway access. So the zoning code currently allows 2 driveway access per frontage on a commercial property. Being that they're combining the existing lot with the facility that's there with the vacant lot into one lot and adding a second primary structure, they're looking at putting a third access point. So it's making the lot much larger, but they're utilizing the 2 access points now, but they're going to put a parking lot and then put an access point on the end of the new parking lot. So then you really end up with 3 access points off of River Road onto the one property. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's the second access point for the second building, but it's actually the third total access. And that's why we're here, because it exceeds the allowable by code.
Okay. Any questions for Jason on that? Right. Comfortable bringing this forward to the next regular meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Then up to number 8, which is consider U.S. Cellular cell tower proposal. We discussed this at the last committee of the whole, basically just started the conversation on it. Patrick did send out some letters to people in that neighborhood. Was in the newspaper. I think the word's gotten out as far as this proposal. I don't know if anyone on the council's heard anything back one way or the other. At this point, I've talked to one person that lives on Waterloo Street, and I think he was concerned that the tower was going to be in his backyard, and when I explained the exact location of it, he seemed a little bit more comfortable with it, and I think there's maybe just been some confusion about exactly where the tower would be located, et cetera. Andy?
The only feedback I got is someone was concerned there'd be some light pollution from the top. They wanted to make sure that, it's not a bright flashing light, maybe a dull red light. Like, I don't know what the rules are for that, so.
We have the representative from U.S. Cellular here who
All right,
could probably
perfect.
answer that for you.
Yes, this is a 120-foot monopole. Should not be lit. The standard is 200 feet and above is lit.
Okay.
Below that, it's not. No major airports in the immediate area to worry about, so the light tower should not be lit, and there would be possibly lighting on the equipment or the doors, or above the doors if there's a shelter, but we can put shades on those, or, reflectors to point it down if that would be their concern.
Okay.
Rod?
My only concern is that we're putting a large metal pole right around where lots of kids play softball. Will that attract lightning, or if there's lightning in the area, will the lightning go to the pole instead of to the kids?
I don't know the answer to that. There's currently lights out there.
Are there?
I'm guessing there's lights out there, I should say, that with around the baseball field and that.
Yeah, that's what I
Not as
thought.
tall as that.
Yeah, not
but-
as tall.
Right.
Is there a lightning rod on there? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Reagan?
I was curious about support of the structure. You'll notice, like out on 151, when one of those towers is out in the middle of the field, it's tethered with the tension cables. Is there any need for that?
No, this
Okay.
will, closest way to, just a monopole. It's very similar to like a ATC transmission tower.
Okay.
Just the tube going up in the air, then antennas around that.
Good deal.
Just a pole, not 3 legs, no guy wires.
Right. Thank you.
Patrick, did you want to say anything?
I think just a couple of things, since I did send a letter out to 53 properties around, that I should at least share, some of the response that I received. Most of them were just voicemail, so I wasn't able to dig into it further with those who responded, but I did get 5 calls. All were concerned and opposed to the tower, and the reasons listed, just the eyesore. We have children in there, just concerned about that. One respondent mentioned concerns about radiation emitting from the tower. So that was, and I guess the last one was, is there a better location? Now I know I've talked with Todd about various locations and trying to, avoid as much questions as possible, but that was a suggestion thrown out in one of the messages I received, so. The other thing I think I should share too is that I met with the Kiwanis Club yesterday. Kiwanis Club had a big impact on the creation of the park there, and had a good discussion with them. There was concern by some of the members about just utilizing some land that may be needed in the future for some other recreational use. What if somebody want to put a skate park or something there, or that was what was shared by a couple of people, but Then there were also comments about, well, we don't see the positioning of where it's located to be really an optimal place for where a future recreational thing could go anyway. And they were open to, or supportive of, if rent monies could be used towards the park, towards even all the city parks, recognizing that, revenues are scarce and parks have needs. So I think in the end, overall, there was some real supportive voices. I think they were struggling. Some were thinking as a club they should have a position, but ultimately some said, we're just citizens like everyone else. We should express our issues with the city, our elected officials individually. So that was really the extent of this discussion that I had with them. So I think they appreciated the information and the fact that we reached out to them. So
Yeah, thank you for sending out the letter to those in the neighborhood. I think you put together a very good list of, pros and cons for people to consider. I think that there may be a general reaction for someone to not want to see a tower like this in town, and that it could change the skyline, so to speak. But if we can't prohibit this tower from being in town, I think it would be a wise choice to have it in a city location where we have some control over, the location of it, and also the revenue for park improvements, capital improvements in the future. I think as long as I've been on the council, we've had discussions about that park in particular, about the need for drain tile, that there's flooding that occurs, and to look at that additional revenue to go right back into the park and improve it, I think is an opportunity for the park. Anybody else have anything to add up here?
I just quickly wanted to ask, and maybe we answered this last time, and forgive me if I don't recall, but have you approached some of the private property owners yet, or are you waiting for a determination from us before you even seek to see if there's interest on their end? Because I know we mentioned a couple.
Right, I've already approached two other
Okay.
property owners, yes.
Great. They seemed favorable, or?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yes.
I agree with Mike. I mean, I think, if this is gonna go up anyway, we need to take advantage of the revenue that would go back into the parks. And I would want to see that as a stipulation. Revenue goes into the parks, capital improvements.
I like that idea as
That'd be
well,
good.
and maybe with a resolution of some sort, prioritizing Kiwanis Park first, and go from there.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Is there a general expected lifespan of a tower like this?
Right now, I'm working on doing extensions with US Cellular on 25-year-old leases, that their towers are still there. So I think it's gonna outlast any of us in the room, probably.
So I suppose
Safely.
the technology can change once the tower's up, I suppose.
Technology can change, but I look at, there's a lot of people with a lot of money still investing in this. So they're putting a lot of money out there, and they plan on sticking around.
Okay. Any other questions from council? I guess what is the first step we need to take then if we move this forward? If
I think Paul will need to take a look at the lease agreement and make sure that there's understanding from both sides that all the issues are covered. If there's support in going forward, I don't know. I guess I would take your lead if you want to see it in a committee of the whole, or if you are comfortable in moving it and reviewing it at the regular meeting.
personally feel like if we just kind of got over the conversation of whether or not we're going to have a tower, that we should at least bring the lease issue back to the committee of the whole and start that there. I mean, we'd kind of set a month 2 weeks ago, and we're slightly ahead of schedule, I guess, unless we hear any other input, but I'd like to at least see the lease before we take it to a regular meeting. Just bring it to the committee of the whole. Is anyone opposed to that?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you have something ready by the next meeting, Paul?
Absolutely. Have you seen a draft of the lease yet? Okay. I've reviewed the lease one time through already. I'll take another quick look at it. I didn't have a lot of specific negative comments about the lease. There's a few issues for your consideration, and I'll put that together for next time.
Okay, great.
Would there be any chance that we could, if we get your comments, we can start working through those instead of waiting till the next meeting to take it to the next?
Yeah, I can submit my comments to Patrick as soon as I get them done, and then he can do with them as he wishes.
And could you maybe just forward that to us before the next meeting? I mean,
Yeah.
even if we don't have it on paper, just as an email format, so we kind of,
Sure. I think what we'll do is, once we have an agreement here, then I can get it out to you for a review so you can see it.
then we can keep things moving.
Yeah.
Okay, great,
But just to be clear, we're going to the cow then on
Correct.
the 7th.
correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll have that at the next committee of the whole then. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then number 9, I guess, if we just want to maybe get a staff update of what has occurred to date, or just a general outline. I know that this went to the Plan Commission last Thursday. I haven't been able to watch the meeting, but, so council kind of knows what to expect, or when we're going to see this again. Is it going to be in 2 weeks, or?
I am not sure when you're going to see this again. I guess the best way that I can characterize where we are is the developer has taken 2 steps forward and 3.5 steps backwards. The discussion that I had with Jim Grothman last week, who is the surveyor, who's kind of representing, I think, the owner of the property. We've hit a snag in that the manner in which the city is going to require the actual vacation to take place is not something that the developer is interested in doing right now. The way that I look at how this has to happen is that there will need to be a petition to vacate the lots so that we can have a clean slate and take all the lot lines out of the plat. That is a circuit court petition review similar to what we did with the Hajewski Columbus Self-Storage Project a few months ago. In addition to that, we also need to remove the streets, which are dedicated to the public already. And the statute that you would use to vacate the lots is not available to vacate the streets because the plat has to be in effect for 40 years in order to vacate the streets, which we don't have. So that would require the developer to resort to the more traditional street vacation process, which is done commonly and which is not overly complicated, except for the fact that I've asked the surveyor for a meets and bounds legal description of every single street that they are going to vacate, which is going to be a rather large project. Similarly, the outlots that are there are the same type of situation. In order to properly vacate them, we need to have a meets and bounds description of the outlots, and then we have to also get rid of about 6 or 7 easements and put in some other easements to cover the city's future utility needs. So all of that requires a lot of survey work, and I spoke with the surveyor last week, and basically we're looking for an alternative way to do this easier, quicker, faster from the developer's perspective, which I'm not really opposed to, but I don't know of any way to do it faster. At the end of our conversation with the surveyor, I just basically said, this is your project, and the city doesn't particularly care how you go about doing it, because when it's all done, the land is going to be owned by other people, and as long as the title company is satisfied, if and when they ever go to sell it to somebody else, the city doesn't have a concern. But they haven't been able to figure out a way to get around what I think the requirements are right now, so they're kind of at a standstill there. From my understanding of the Plan Commission meeting, the issue was raised as Ms. Hermanson also informed you earlier about the possibility of a parkland being part of this. I'm not exactly sure that was where that was left, but, you know, the reality is that the city will be giving back to the developer in excess of 15 acres of land that's currently dedicated to the city. Does the council want a park out there? Has the developer already made an appropriate park dedication from before? I don't know the answer to that. Did the prior developer pay in order to avoid the park? I don't know the answer to that either. So that's kind of where we are right now, and it's back in the developer's court to bring this forward.
Thanks, Paul. Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, I think at the plan commission level, there was concern about the park. It's about 5 acres that was going to be considered the park area. I don't think the plan commission or myself had any big concerns about the right-of-ways that would be reverting back if it's not going to be developed. There's not a need for the right-of-ways. But I don't think that it would be appropriate to deed back what was intended to be the park, which was adjacent to the existing city land where the lift station was for many years. So I think Plan Commission was okay with the process moving forward, so long as the park wasn't going to go away and the city would be affected there. You know, there are no immediate plans, as you know, to develop that park. Maybe if there's some interest and some, you know, stuff that way. But, you know, so I think the Plan Commission's okay with it moving forward, but it doesn't sound like now that maybe the developer, Mr. Hanson, wants to do it that way. And this is more their problem than our problem. It's been sitting out there for 2-3 years now, so.
That's correct.
So we probably don't know exactly which course this is going to take. I mean, would this go back to the Plan Commission possibly, depending upon which course they take, or is it going to come to the Committee of the Whole if it goes anywhere?
I think that ultimately the Plan Commission has to weigh in on the map that needs to be approved. Yes. So the Plan Commission will have to review this at some point in time. The question is, will the Plan Commission take a look at this again before the vacation process starts? Because the vacation has to be completed before the map can be approved. So we have a bunch of circles going right now, and Mayor Crombie is correct that it's the city has offered its cooperation where it can, but the developer has to decide how and when and if they want to do anything.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, the problem can really be corrected in about 10 minutes by preparing a corrective deed to correct the legal description and
that would
change
be
the legal
another option.
description to what the plat was instead of a meets and bounds legal description. But that's not, again, not for us to determine what's written on a deed. But
That would be another
You should
suggestion.
charge for your services, Kelly.
would be a conflict.
All right, well, thank you for the update anyway. Then on to number 10, which is consider and take action to amend task order 2015-09 with Rupert Milkie for 2016 street reconstruction, design, bidding, and construction services. We've got the information in our packet here. This is information that we had reviewed at our, I guess, post-mortem follow-up streets workshop a couple weeks ago. Jason's here to address the council if there's any questions, but he did get us the additional information that was requested as far as breaking down the hours for the additional costs associated. Jason?
Yeah, so basically just reiterate what Michael said. After our discussion, I had gone back and provided a little more detail as to break down kind of the hours associated with the tasks and the rates. I know we kind of looked at those total costs and what the average rate was and kind of talked a little bit about what staff applied to what tasks. And so hopefully that clarified a little bit of that information for you guys for consideration. Again, you know, we're just obviously looking for some consideration for the amendment request on this. I know we obviously invested a lot of time and effort, and hopefully out of the lessons learned component, that we've corrected a lot of those things that have led to this cost and this proposed amendment change. Also, just obviously throw out that, you know, moving forward with the new task orders, we've been doing breakouts or hour takeoffs for the council, for your information of how we arrive at these costs, just so you can kind of see the assumptions we're making as well. So on all the new task orders, even like the one that was approved tonight, you can see that, you know, a little more detail that lies behind those, to help better understand, you know, those assumptions, so we're not coming back after the fact, looking at these situations. So if you have any other questions, I'd be hopefully happy to answer them or follow up.
Any questions from council? None? Comfortable bringing this forward to the next regular meeting then?
I would rather wait to consider this fully until after we've got everything addressed after the spring. I know you guys have to go back through with the contractor, so that would be, you know, I've got no problem considering this, but I just think we're maybe going a little faster than we need to.
The one thing I would offer up, and I had mentioned at the last meeting as well, is, you know, it's not my intent that here on out, we know there's some time invested from our staff, but that wouldn't be billed to the city. That would be time on our end to help close out the project, because we know we obviously have some cost overruns now. So obviously, if that's a concern, we're still in it, we're committed to finishing out the project. But I'm looking at recouping, obviously, the cost of the proposed amendment. Part of the issue, and you know, I respect what you're saying, Reagan, but you know, we've had this sitting out there for a long time on our books too, and so, you know, I was looking for some closure on it, and you know, if you're not willing to move it forward, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Again, I appreciate even considering it, but just know that, you know, we're not moving forward on invoicing any further on this project during the closeout phase. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I was a little confused by your spreadsheet, to be honest with you. All the dates are listed for the future, not the past.
did I make a typo?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find it here.
All the
No.
dates are 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously those dates would have been applicable to 16, so
Okay.
I apologize for that.
So,
Any other questions, concerns? What's the will of the council?
I kind of agree with Reagan. I don't see a rush here.
I'm fine. We can wait.
I think that we probably should make a decision on whether it's something we want to consider or not. As Jason said, I guess it doesn't sound like he's planning on billing us out any additional for the warranty work or any of the follow-up work. But this is the amount. It's what, $31,000, I think. $31,923 is what the additional costs would be. And those were accrued during the project, so I don't know that waiting is gonna.
Yeah, I would just say, Mike, since I'm kind of the one who was looking to postpone the consideration here, given what Jason said about costs being fixed at this point, and I think, you know, we've had a pretty fruitful discussion. At the last meeting, we spoke about this in January, so at this point, I'm fairly confident that we'll get these issues resolved, and if the price is fixed, then, you know, we can move it forward for a vote at the regular meeting to consider it.
You comfortable bringing this forward to the next meeting then for a vote?
I'm comfortable.
Okay, we'll bring this forward and to the next regular council meeting then. Thanks,
All right,
Jason.
thank you.
All right, then on to number 11, which is consider an ordinance to repeal and recreate part of Chapter 82 concerning the collection and disposal of solid waste. This is something that we've had on our Committee of the Whole for a while, and we've tabled it a few times. I have a whole bunch of notes, though, this week. Does anybody else have anything? Or, Paul, did you have anything you wanted to say up front?
I guess I can frame the issue a little bit by just explaining what you're looking at that was in your packet. Basically, I've went through your existing chapter 82, which deals with solid waste collection and disposal, and tried to incorporate the things that I know are coming with the carts and with your new contract with Columbia County, and then also trying to bring it up to speed with what is actually going on. It's a first effort, and from conversations that we've had briefly in the past, I know there are other issues that need to be either A, added, or B, deleted, or C, modified. So I have my pen in my hand.
I'll jump in then, since no one else is fighting me for airtime here. On the first page, 82-32, Declaration of Policy, it looks like this is drafted in the late 70s. The only wording I didn't like in there is that environment and promote the health, safety, welfare of the city by establishing minimum mandatory standards for the storage, collection. Minimum mandatory standards, to me, doesn't sound like we're trying very hard. Can we just have standards or something to that effect? Not that that's a big deal. It's 2017. And then on the following page, number 6, garbage, all non-recyclable solid waste also has brush, leaves, and grass in there. I don't think that that's considered garbage in the city anymore, because we have the recycling center and we don't want to encourage people to be putting compostable materials in the garbage. So I think we should scratch brush, leaves, and grass out of there. Anyone have a problem with that? Okay. On to the next page, number 14, under white goods. We've got stoves, refrigerators, washers, dryers, water heaters, freezers, microwave ovens, and air conditioners. What about computers and electronics? Are those considered white goods, or is that a class of its own, or do we need to address electronics?
I think it's a class of its own.
Okay.
And I also think it's not mentioned anywhere in here.
Okay, then I think we should probably bring that up. There's a lot of electronics that need to be recycled or disposed of.
Is there a state statute on that too at this point? As far as electronics in a landfill?
There's a list of things that can't go in, and a lot of the materials in computers are in that.
Right, well, I was even thinking stereos and all that. I don't even think those can go in. Vacuum cleaners. I'm pretty sure that's all
You have to pretty much
regulated
take them
out.
apart.
Or thrift them.
That's all I had on that page. I don't know if there's any more discussion on that, but I think having the need for the electronics should be somewhere in there.
Okay.
Does number 11 for recyclable waste match up exactly with what the county accepts?
Well, that was gonna be my suggestion.
Recyclable waste?
Yeah.
Because at some point we should run this by Greg too,
Yeah.
just to
I
say,
think
hey,
the answer to your question is it needs to. Excuse me. I think Greg has looked at this once. But yes, the list needs to match up what Columbia County will accept. That's kind of the whole point.
Guess I piggyback on that too, on number 11. When we do match it up, I would suggest maybe in a aluminum container, everything has a number on it. Maybe we could list the number of that recyclable product. Yeah, because foam, polystyrene packaging, I actually confused that for styrofoam, which is not recyclable, and they let me know. So apparently it's like the foam in meat packaging, which is recyclable.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know.
I think the county had a specific list of like numbers of plastics they would take.
I
which is
just
good
thought
to
we
have.
should match
Yep.
that up with numbers too.
Let me ask the question from the complete opposite approach. Do you want to have in your code of ordinances the complete list that will be changing and morphing from time to time as technology improves or things become impossible to recycle or whatever the case might be? Or do you want to cut out this section altogether and use paragraph K that just basically says, whatever the county takes is what we'll recycle? And then leave it to, put the list on the city website and have the county give you an updated list from time to time, and then that way you don't, the benefit of doing that is you're not changing your ordinance every time that they make a change. The downside of doing that is that somewhere, somehow, you need to have a list available to the general public someplace if you have any intention of trying to enforce this. So, I mean, there's a plus minus there.
There used to be something specifically in
Go ahead,
the
Kelly.
state statutes and the administrative code.
Maybe isn't the county gonna be the one almost enforcing it? If somebody's throwing out a bunch of stuff that's clearly recyclable, they're gonna be aware at some point. I mean, even if it's with carts or something, I mean, there's, some of those trucks have cameras even on them. I mean, I don't think people are trying to, maybe they are, but I think people try to recycle where it's.
I agree. I look for just the recycling symbol, the triangle on a package, and I don't necessarily go through an approved list, because I figured if it gets to the recycling center, if it's not recyclable, they're gonna,
Well, they sort that out too
Yeah, they-
before,
correct.
when they're processing it. So if your styrofoam got in there, well, they're going to just,
Pitch it.
I mean, they don't want that
So-
obviously, but,
So if it's not really an enforcement issue,
I mean, I don't think the police are gonna be enforcing
No.
it.
no.
It's more of an aspirational statute ordinance than anything.
and that's, I kind of feel like, yeah, we should at least have something in the ordinance that states that we want to encourage people to recycle, maybe to a fault, and whether or not we can enforce any of it, I just think that a lot of it is from the late 70s, and it doesn't address a lot of things. And like you said, Paul, that the list can always evolve. The county's going to take different things or not take different things, but we could put some language in with the approved list that we have now to reflect that, just a simple sentence.
Well,
you know?
right now you have both approaches, because you have a specific list and then you have paragraph K, which is a catch-all.
Yeah, yep.
And that's perfectly fine to leave it that way if that's how you want to go.
Yeah. I don't know the ins and outs of like the recycling grant, what is considered responsible recycling, I think we want to encourage citizens to make their best attempt at recycling what they can. We may not have perfection, but to try to encourage people to do the best they can. So are we okay then with doing the updated list with the county then on A through E, and then leaving the catch-all with the K? Is that the way you guys want to proceed?
Yeah, leave the catch-all for sure. I could do away without the other.
Okay.
So you
So,
want to leave all of the, there's A through I. A through J, actually, and then K.
Mhm.
I think we want the K as the catch-all, correct?
Yeah.
But I think we want to update everything before that with what the county has listed.
Right,
Okay.
okay, so
Yep.
the list I have here, and then make sure that that's consistent with what the county has. If there's more that needs to be added, add it. If there's some that needs to be detracted, detract it.
Yep.
Got it.
Okay. Okay, we went through 14 already. I think I mentioned this last time, Paul, but on page 4, under solid waste carts, about addressing lost, stolen, or damaged carts, or if they're damaged multiple times. I think that there's some language in there that says that repairs would be made at the let's see, yes, cart must be, the city will provide a replacement cart to the residential unit and shall charge the residential unit the actual cost of the replacement cart. The residential unit will have 30 days following receipt. Does that address whether it's stolen or lost, or someone moves out of town and takes their garbage cart with them? The next resident moves in, they don't have a cart, who's paying for that? I don't know if you can address that in there, but
I don't think you, well, I'm not sure you should.
okay.
And again, that's a choice. If I remember correctly, I think the county replaces one cart if it's damaged or stolen or broken to smithereens, and after that, it's the unit owner's or unit resident responsibility, which is what I have in there right now. I haven't made any special provisions if somebody steals a cart, because I guess that falls back to the person who's supposed to be using the cart. And I haven't made any provision for if somebody takes it to their new location in a different municipality. I can try. But basically, the way that I look at this is the cart is the possession of the person who's using it, and if they let it slip through their fingers, that's their problem. And if they beat the crap out of it or set it on fire or the other things that Greg was mentioning, that's also their problem. The problem is that the county bills the city, and the city needs to turn around and collect that from or at least have the opportunity to collect it from the owner.
Rod, did you have a question?
I have a question on something else, on scavenging.
Can I
Before we can-
just,
yeah.
okay.
I was excited.
My concern there is that if someone owns like a rental property and that the tenant should move away with the cart, that whoever moves back in there gets a cart and that we can recover that cost for that replacement, that doesn't turn into an issue where someone doesn't have a cart. And then also the way that we're basically paying for the carts over time by the additional cost. It just kind of throws the whole thing off, I guess. Did you have a question?
Well, I would make a suggestion. I'm like, why, I mean, as far as a rental situation, why would it be a rental situation anyway? I mean, for me, that cost, that responsibility would go to the rental owner. Versus, I don't know how it goes in a situation like that.
And there's language in here that states that it could be,
Right now, it does go back to the owner
Correct.
of the building, because that's the club that the city has.
Yep.
Is the special charge under the statute. So it wouldn't be going back to the tenant, it'd be going back to the owner, which may not be the most fair way to handle it, but it's the best way for the city to potentially get reimbursed.
yeah.
Do we know if these carts are tagged or labeled in any way, saying property of Columbia County Waste Disposal, yada, yada?
I actually think they do.
That's what I was
And I
thinking.
think they
that
have
would-
numbers on them too, but I don't know if that means anything.
Right, I mean, it's not necessarily, it's not a lock and key preventing you, but if all of a sudden we had a mass exodus of our carts going to another community, I think that we'd find out.
I know other communities, they number their carts and then they tie the number to a property. I haven't gone that far in a conversation with Greg yet to know if the county does it, but that seems to be what they do.
Ruth, did you have a comment?
At this time, I don't think the city requires apartment buildings to recycle the residents that live there, and it's, there's quite a few people living in these units, and I was surprised. I had experience myself, and I was surprised they weren't required to recycle, which if we're trying to promote recycling, I think it might be nice if the council would look at that to expand the program to apartment buildings.
Ann, go ahead.
Everyone is supposed to recycle, whether it's commercial, apartments, but the city only contracted with someone to pick up 1 to 4 family units, residential. this is mainly dealing with how who the city is contracting to pick up. Everybody's supposed to recycle, no matter if they're manufacturing, commercial, multifamily, whatever. But the city is only picking up garbage for residential 1 to 4 units.
Okay.
And then this is how they're doing it. But everybody's gotta, because this is dealing with separating and how it's getting picked up. But everybody's supposed to recycle and just do it on their own. And the apartment buildings are supposed to be recycling too. The city's just not involved in the pickup and the monitoring of it. They're supposed to do that
Okay.
without city involvement,
All right, thank you.
you know. So I guess it's not working, huh? Yeah, nobody.
I think that's because we don't have an issued bin for recycling, technically, so there may be some confusion there. You're pointing at? Rod, you want to
figured it
talk
out.
about
Yeah.
scavenging?
I'll redact my
Come
comment.
on, I was getting excited.
I'm not
I don't know what to
excited
say about
anymore.
that. That's only
I have a
one sentence.
Go ahead, Andy.
I had a question about 8237C, restriction of time of placement. Restriction on time of placement. It says all garbage shall be placed at the curb no earlier than 12 hours prior to the scheduled date of collection. Just to clarify, is that just noon the day before? Or are we talking, because, the date of collection starts at 12:01 a.m. So I just curious what that definition is here.
That's how I would interpret that.
Okay. Thank you. Then I don't see a problem with it.
On that same page, then, at the very top, subsection C, this is about brushes, leaves, and grass. It says brush, bags, or leaves shall be placed in the terrace area at the curbway. I don't believe we've picked up bags of yard waste on the terrace for a very long time. So I thought just scratching the word bags.
They're supposed to be.
The leaves are picked up by DPW, so we don't do a spring cleanup, so scratch the word bags.
Okay.
And then right below that, we have a citywide yard cleanup to pick up grass clippings, leaves, and garden waste may be held in the spring and fall of each year at the discretion of the Director of Public Works. Yard waste shall be placed in biodegradable bags or containers of 30 gallons or less, not to exceed 50 pounds per container. Bags or containers placed in the terrace area between the curb and the sidewalk by 7 a.m. on the scheduled cleanup day will be picked up. No plastic bags will be picked up. Do we do that?
The last part.
Should we do that? If we don't do that, do we want to have that in here? I mean, we don't do a pickup like that. We do brush pickup and we do leaf pickup. But we don't do like a yard cleanup for grass clippings
Delete
and
that
garden
section
waste.
in its
I
entirety.
think if we don't do it, we should just delete it.
Is that accurate, Davis? Do we do that?
We do not.
We do not.
They used to.
We in favor of scratching that?
Yeah.
That paragraph?
Or reviving it.
Hmm?
We should do that.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up right now.
I don't know. Not everybody can make it to the dump. So. I don't know. That's.
I think that was the trade-off with going to more hours at the recycling center, though.
Mm.
And I think they started that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know exactly when that started, but the recycling center has been expanded in recent years.
Okay.
5 years ago, we were picking up brush, chipping brush twice a month. We reduced that to once a month and then expanded the hours at the recycling center to compensate. And have been getting upwards around 12,000 visits to the recycling center every year. But we've never, since I've been here, we've never picked up grass at the curbside, only leaves and brush.
I wonder who took it.
I think the rest of this section, 8236, addresses the brush pickup and the leaf pickup. I just don't think that D really covers anything. Are we okay scratching it or not? Or is it something that you want to discuss?
I'm fine.
I'm good.
You're good with scratching it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reagan?
I guess I'd be in favor of leaving it in there and leaving it up to the discretion of the Public Works Administrator, and then that way, if this becomes an issue in the future, it's already there and we can take care of it, and it says may, not shall, so
Okay.
I don't see that it's a little extra ink. But lots of flexibility.
At the discretion of the Director of Public Works. Okay. You okay with leaving it in? All right.
So we're gonna leave it in?
I guess we're leaving it in, because the word discretion is in there, so.
Yep.
Page number 6, collection and disposal of garbage and recyclables other than by city. All haulers shall comply with all applicable rules, regulations, and ordinances established by the city council or a committee of the council. Is there any way we can put some language in here that would reflect state statutes, or what a garbage truck is required to actually function, or someone who does this, as opposed to leaving this up to the city council or committee of the council to define that? That just doesn't seem like that's much of a standard, I guess. There's got to be some reference to that through state statute, I would assume. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, page 8, 82-39. Violation of prohibited activities and non-collectible materials. Materials in violation shall be tagged with a notice informing the property owner of the violation and corrective action required. If tagged, the materials shall be removed within 24 hours by the property owner. I think the question here is who's responsible for the tagging? Is it going to be the vendor? It is, okay.
Well, the way that I would read this, as I sit here right now, is, and the perfect example is the recycle bin is being emptied and out pops a computer monitor. That's where the tagging will take place, and that's who the enforcement is gonna be done by.
Okay.
That's how I would interpret it right now.
That's what I would interpret as well, but I don't know how Greg or how the county operates, and if that's something they do in other communities, so it's something I'd be looking for feedback on, I guess, from Greg. Further down there, 8241, preparation of recyclables, pretty standard language. Newspapers, magazines, and corrugated cardboard shall be tied in bundles. Is that a requirement? I don't do that personally. I'm sorry. I put it all in one receptacle, and I think if we're going to automated cans, it's pointless to have a requirement to tie that all together if it's going into the
Right.
receptacle.
You don't need to do that anymore.
Okay, so scratch that line. And then the line after that, all recyclables shall be deposited in the area so marked at the city recycling center. We don't utilize the recycling center for those items currently. So we should probably scratch that.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Which one was that, Michael?
That would be.
Bottom of page 8.
Bottom of page 8, yep.
Right.
Preparation of recyclables. All containers are to be rinsed, cleaned, and all caps, covers, and rings removed. That's pretty standard.
But, yeah, but if we were ever going to have like the extra bulk collection of recyclable materials, like I've been asking for months, wouldn't that be a good place to capture that?
I thought you were asking for like a bulk pickup of other types of stuff.
No, so, like I've said this before, and we should have a place for someone that can bring extra recyclables if their bin is full or they miss a pickup because they're on vacation or whatever. And we talked about, we've talked about that a few times, right, Patrick? and we were gonna look into it. I just thought that that seems like that might be a good place to.
Well,
we
I
kept that in.
agree with what you're trying to do, but I just don't know if that goes under preparation of recyclables. We're trying to define what our recycling center is and what we accept more than how you prepare the recyclables. If that's something that you want to discuss, I think we should need to put that somewhere else in this ordinance, I guess, or have that as a discussion, you know what I mean? I mean, we can't take this line, all recyclables shall be deposited in the area so marked at the city recycling center, and use that to define our city recycling center. I think it's a separate
So you were just
subsection.
wanting to remove that one line?
I wanted to keep the first line, all containers
Okay.
are to be rinsed, and, because this, to me, is about pickup, I guess.
Okay,
You
that's
know,
fine.
What's being picked up on the
Okay,
curb.
that's good.
Not frequency or.
Correct. I support what you're getting at, Andy. I just don't know that the language there is
Just need a
effective.
different section.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then the top of the first page, transporting, again, if we could do what I had mentioned a few pages ago about defining, it's to prevent the escape of materials. I mean, whoever's picking up and transporting recyclables should probably have some idea of what, standards are, I guess. Or licensing requirements, et cetera. 82-43, compliance. The contractor responsible for the collection of solid waste and recyclables shall establish and publicize a procedure for receiving and responding to citizen complaints. Establish and publicize a procedure. I don't know that that's like ordinance language to me. It seems like the ordinance is then stating that we're going to figure out how we're going to address the problem. So I don't know if we get rid of that, or we have to have a separate section where we define that process of the tagging of the violations, and then how that's followed up with after the fact. And I think some of that is brought up here under enforcement. The Director of Public Works shall administer the enforcement of this section upon receiving notice of a violation by a citizen. The director shall first attempt to notify the alleged violator in writing of the offense. Upon receiving notice of a violation by a citizen, do we want to take violations or complaints from citizens about this, or should this be coming from the county waste haulers that are actually picking up the garbage on the curb? Does that make sense? It seems like we're involving. Okay. I just think that general area just needs to be cleaned up to go, this is how it works, A, B to C, instead of having establish and publicize a procedure. And that's something Greg is going to have to be involved in, obviously.
The establish and publicize a procedure clause, I believe I pulled that from the contract that the county has.
Okay.
Because that is something that they have agreed to do.
Okay.
So that's where that language comes from. Paragraph B regarding enforcement is always the $500 question in an ordinance, and that is who exactly does the enforcement, who exactly makes the complaints. And it's a common issue in local ordinances. I can, almost always, I would suggest that it is the police department that does the investigation and issues the citations for the complaints, but somehow that didn't seem quite proper in this particular situation. But somebody has to have the authority to remedy the complaint, and if it's not the police department, and I don't think it should be here, it's certainly not gonna be the city council, and it's not gonna be Patrick. So the list is getting kinda short. The county's not gonna wanna be responsible for enforcement. That has to be done on a local level someplace. So Davis gets to be the lucky guy.
Right, Davis is already in charge of the standards for snow removal and
Right.
length of grass, and seems to fall in line with all that.
That's all I had.
I can clean, now, I can make the adjustments that we've discussed today and bring it back. Do you want me to bring it back, keeping all of the red lines that are already in here? Or do you want to have a clean copy with the red lines from tonight only?
Council, what do you?
Or both?
I think tonight only.
It doesn't matter to me at all.
It's gonna start to get rather busy
Yeah.
at some point. So maybe I'll accept all the changes from before and then add in the changes from tonight.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on that issue? Okay, then we'll move on to number 12. Review of winter parking rules, municipal lots and streets. There is a memo in our packet kind of framing this issue. I guess I remember some of the discussions we had on the council when we did amend the ordinance for winter parking several years ago. And I've been contacted by Mr. Lang about some issues he's had with the alternate side parking issues. And I'm not really sure where to go with this, so I thought it would be probably good for us to have some conversation here as far as updating where we're at on this issue. Patrick, did you want to say anything? I know that you've talked to pretty much everybody on staff about this issue, and
Right. Well, I think I laid it out in the memo. It does seem that, what was in place in the past and is shown in our signage doesn't quite blend well with what has been changed in the ordinance in terms of winter parking on the streets. So I think that we're here to talk about, cleaning that up. Because as I said, there's sections in the ordinance that require the following of signage, but we've got signage out there that directs an activity that doesn't connect to an ordinance since the ordinance was changed. So I think that's what the discussion has to be is, how we address that. There seems to be confusion on both the enforcement side and on the residents' side. Mr. Lang has highlighted those issues.
I feel like we kind of missed this when we changed the ordinance a couple of years ago. We just, the 2-inch snow rule, I believe, at the time was discussed, and we amended the ordinance to avoid having an arbitrary date, I guess, or window of time where you couldn't park vehicles on the city street, whether or not it had snowed between a couple of calendar dates. Rod, I think you had gotten some complaints from people in your neighborhood at the time around Easter. And so I think the attempt here is to have enforcement when the snow rule was in effect, which is 2 inches or greater. So as far as the alternate side parking in the municipal lots, I don't know what purpose the alternate side parking serves unless it snows and you have to have those vehicles moved so you can clean the lot. Someone had mentioned to me that without having the alternate side parking that you may not have vehicles moving as frequently as they should. But when you start looking at the code, 98-77, 98-78, and 98-79, which I don't have here, it becomes even more confusing because you have a business district and then you have residential parking as well, and there are time limitations in those different areas. I believe 72 hours is the maximum, like in a residential area, if I understand correctly, and then the 24-hour limit would be in the business district, which I'm assuming all these lots would fall into the downtown lots. So you have a 24-hour limit there where you couldn't have a vehicle parked in one lot. But if there was a 2-inch rule violation, that car would have to be moved. I mean, the 24-hour rule doesn't give them any safety there either. So I'm not sure what the council feels about this. I think if you're gonna have a sign, that the sign should be tied to an ordinance personally, and when you start looking at the ordinances 98, 77 through 79, there is very specific language in there, literally for, like, out front of City Hall where you can only park for 15 minutes. That is in the ordinance. It's not just based upon a sign that's posted there. And I feel like if this is something that we're in favor of having in lots, that it should be tied to an ordinance. If it's not, then we should eliminate the alternate side parking rule with the calendar and make it about the 2-inch rule.
Yeah, my thought on, I agree with that. I don't want to mess with the 2-inch rule as it is on residential streets now. I think that's very beneficial, and I think, I think it serves the public well. However, we definitely need to look at the lots and the need for the alternate side parking.
So we can go one way or the other, I guess. I mean, we either add an ordinance to reflect the signs, or we change the signs. So I think that's what we need to find consensus on here. Or maybe there's a third option I'm not thinking of. Paul, did you want to say something?
Are you trying to create a situation where the alternate side parking rules in the municipal lots will apply from December 1st to April 15 only in the event of a 2-inch snowfall? Is that where you're really trying to go?
I don't think that calendar dates even have anything to do with it.
Only the 2-inch snowfall part?
I think so.
Okay, because then you're gonna end up with an ordinance and new signs, both.
I believe the dates were in effect on the old alternate side
Right.
street, but those went away with the 2-inch rule.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you amend your ordinance so that, I got it, hang on. Municipal parking lot for more than 24 hours for any vehicle, blah, 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 blah. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for 79, which is the winter parking regulations. Yeah, so you have, it shall be unlawful to park any vehicle on any public street or alley in the city upon the accumulation of 2 inches or more of snow. So basically, you'd be adding a paragraph C that says, in the event of a 2-inch snowfall, vehicles are allowed to park in the municipal parking lots on alternate sides. Something like that.
It seems like the easiest way is just to recognize the lots.
Right.
Yes.
So you need to make a separate rule for the lots, provide for alternate sides so they can be cleaned in a 2-day progression, basically, and tie it to a 2-inch snowfall. Then you're
How do you
done.
know which side's the alternate side?
Well,
They have rows, right?
right, they have a row 1, row 2 designation, and it's the same rule that Madison follows, use the date after midnight, which is confusing as to everybody. But it is really the better way to do it, I think.
The other issue that I had noticed is the Dickinson Boulevard parking. The signs actually call that a lot. It's a street, and there's no alternate side rule out there, but the actual sign says lot, which makes it even more confusing. So, but it has to, you have to have the signage clearly posted for each lot, it seems like, and I think this was overlooked when we went to the 2-inch rule.
So we need to change the ordinance and the signs?
If we do
Because
what
we
we
need
were
to
just
get
talking
rid of
about,
the
that's what
dates.
you'll end up with, because your signs that are existing have reference to dates, December 1 and April 1.
That'd be great if the snow only fell between those
That
dates.
would be super good. Everything else on the sign is,
So they ruled it so, doesn't it?
yeah. The Columbus Common Council has determined that it can only snow from December 1st to April 1st.
Davis, you're in charge of enforcing that.
So you're, basically, the sign then would be okay, and if you can white out the dates and put upon 2-inch snowfall, you'd be all set.
Yeah.
Or you could even
What-
just put the, oh, I'm sorry.
Get to tell.
No, go ahead.
So, all right.
You have to
so-
talk to Mike before you see if you can.
Did you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, or, I mean, if the issue is, the 2 inches of snow, I mean, like I say, I mean, I believe the dates are irrelevant, but whether you have the dates there or not, it's not an issue unless there's a snow. So, whether it's whited out or say, but just another issue I'd wanna, address, like you said, because some of the times, and this is a issue with the business parking district, and I think part of it might be a zoning thing too. Might be it's probably a separate issue, but as far as I don't know if the 24-hour and the 72-hour parking ordinance ties into this, because I'm trying to help, I want to work and, help everybody help each other to get a system that is better though, to address the situation. If the situation is vehicles are potentially then parked, too long, which will be a complaint that you'll hear from business owners or not, then I think we need to take this a step forward and address the 72-hour issue, because as I said previously to this, I ran into the 72-hour issue. So as far as the language, Michael, that you said you weren't a fan of the last thing about having a published policy or something like that, I think there needs to be that with regard to the 72-hour issue as far as that ordinance, because right now, and I don't know unless you guys could provide that for me, I'm not understanding how this whole system works with packets and ordinance. I don't have all the information. But if there was something as far as an enforcement issue then, so we can avoid all these potential complaints or court, situations, to have a specific system in place in an ordinance as far as how do you enforce and address then an issue after 72 hours worth. Are you contacted? Is there a letter of notice before you get into a situation as of having a vehicle towed or something like that? So it might be a little separate, but I just wanted to touch on that.
Can I ask why you're parking a vehicle for 72 hours without moving it? You may have said this last time you were here.
Right.
I'm just curious what.
The situation specifically, well, I have multiple vehicles, okay, and one is a business vehicle. It's a commercial truck. But that truck, as of December 31st, the registration was out on it, so it was parked. So, I mean, my communication with the enforcement on them, it's like, well, if you're going to keep sticking it and telling me to move it, I'll just move it to another spot until I have to do it. But, technically it's not a vehicle that should get moved. So a good question, really super good question. But then my question is that, from my understanding, and I got an old letter from Daniel at the department, as far as my specific location on 104 South Ludington, that is zoned completely different, and that falls under, I don't know where my notes are here. That falls under a mixed use overlay ordinance is what I've read, and I don't know if that is true, but in that situation, the residential owner is not required to provide, a specific parking spot for an individual, and I know that, and I don't know how that applies to certain individuals or not, but I would, and I've tried to address this situation, and my landlord just, says, well, I don't have to. But if there could be a public lot, and I've tried to address this as a question too, or is there a city lot that you guys could provide, or, could we create or something, where even a tenant or a landlord has a right to even pay for a spot? But I think in this situation, I don't know if it just applies to, the Sherrill property, or if there's other properties where they don't have to require, but it's becoming, that's just another thing that adds another layer of, confusion. So, if this is just an opportunity just to, just share some more insight on what that is versus the, 2-inch sign, which is.
I appreciate your comments, and I can say if I've learned one thing in 4 years is that when you have a city that's 175 years old, it's really hard to deal with things when it comes to parking and stuff like that right now, because it's the city has evolved, but yet we can't change a lot of the parking issues, and I think that the intent of having the separate downtown business district and the residential parking rules are because, I live in a residential area. I can park a car in front of my house. for up to 72 hours. And that's a block off of the downtown area. But if you're downtown and you permit parking for 72 hours in a parking lot, then you're going to run into situations where there would be no turnover. And I think that's why they tried to strike a balance to have a 24-hour limit there. I think the alternate side issue, I think we agree with that we're not solving a problem unless there's snow there. However, having an unregistered vehicle, even parked in a residential area of town, presents a problem because someone could come here to sell a vehicle and put their car on the street, and they may live in Sun Prairie. And we can't allow that to happen, I guess. So that's why some of that stuff's put.
But it has been an issue. It has been an issue for the previous 3 years. I mean, there's another vehicle I had out there the year before. That was, again, there's a 72-hour. There's multiple vehicles that have been out in that same area that have either been ticketed or haven't been ticketed, have been towed and not been towed. But I'm saying the policy, I strictly believe there needs to be a policy on how that issue is handled because it hasn't been handled consistently. So I've had times previously, I'll give you another example. It's just, one person's story. But I had a van, and that was 2 years ago because I had another vehicle because I run a business out of an apartment. Crazy, I know. But, and that vehicle was broken down, so it was an issue. And there was some complaints, and Daniel called me, and I had an officer call me, hey, Steve, can you do something about this? I'll give you a window of opportunity. And he did. And they gave me a hard deadline and say, Steve, I need to have this moved by X amount of days, and if not, I will tow it. And there was some communication with that at that point, and I made a hard decision to get rid of it cheap, but I did it to get it out. But what I'm saying is now that policy hasn't been followed. My son had a vehicle out there, 2 years ago. Well, there was no policy with the 72-hour thing where there's no contact at all. This most recent time, there's no contact, no phone call, no nothing, and vehicles are just taken away or towed. So I think an ordinance addressing specifically how you deal with that.
I think the ordinance is pretty clear where there's a 72-hour limit, period. And I think with enforcement with parking issues or anything else, there's obviously discretion. And like you said, you've had communication in the past with the police department. I'm not going to get into the details of any of that or any of the issues, but what we all hope for is consistent enforcement of every rule, but I don't think we can expect perfection. I know that I've gotten a ticket on my vehicle for leaving it out overnight once when it snowed and didn't pay any attention to the weatherman, and I had to pay the ticket. Otherwise, I always put my vehicle in the driveway. So I think there's an ordinance that has to have hard and fast rules, and then there's discretion upon how the communication between the police department and in a special circumstance, I guess, but we have to have an ordinance that's clear.
Correct, but don't you think if we had an ordinance that was more clear as far as an issue as 72 hours, as far as policy about what they would do, then there wouldn't be an issue, like you say, because you can use the word discretion, right? But then it's up for a judgment call, like enforcement. If we leave enforcement up to discretion, then there's we
can't write an ordinance with discretion in it either.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe Kelly.
Well, there's discretion in every action of law enforcement is discretion every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not someone gets ticketed for jaywalking to what a cop is going to pull someone over for speeding, I don't think it's not the city's council's job to determine how a police officer exercises discretion. I mean, I think that's fundamentally up to the individual cop and the department to determine discretion. I mean, that's my own personal opinion.
No, I mean, I completely agree, but isn't it the city council's determination to create city ordinances that they must follow or enforce by discretion? And that's what I'm addressing, the ordinance, the 70. I mean, obviously we're talking about the winter parking ordinance, but I wanted to take that one step further to the 72-hour. And I feel if the language, I don't know the language, but that's just, I'm not disagreeing with.
I don't know how the police officers personally track a vehicle that's been there for 72 hours.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but
they obviously have to have some.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I think you probably didn't do yourself any favors because the vehicle wasn't even licensed. I mean, I think.
But I've had this issue with.
Right, but I mean, that doesn't. Licensed. I don't think that helps the the cause.
No, it might not be. So I just wanted to share that extra bit. So I mean, I don't know if we could, address that, the policy on the, the 24 to 72 hour. I mean, obviously, I would like to see that updated, but I mean, as long as we can, I mean, obviously, I think we're all under agreement that, the alternate side parking is, ineffective. So whatever recommendations you guys think, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, we
share.
don't, and we don't have the other ordinances in front of us right now
Right.
either. I just was looking through them the other night as well, so the alternate side parking was the main issue that
Right.
we wanted to deal with now, so.
Completely agree.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Back to the alternate side issue. What are we, what's the will of the council at this point, I guess, moving forward? How do we want to address it? Is it changing the ordinance, as Paul mentioned, putting some different language in there to address the lot specifically? Or this,
Yeah, I'd like to
Well-
do changes to both the ordinance and the signs, for taping over the dates and just having the 2-inch rule.
so we go to the 2-inch rule, so it's consistent with the street parking. Reagan?
Yeah, that's the logical step in my opinion.
Okay.
I'm fine with the way it is now. I think it was set up alternate sides so that they could at least once clear the entire lane of vehicles. But that's my own personal opinion.
You could still do the same thing with the 2-inch rule.
You
though.
could. I think it makes it a little more complicated, maybe, but
Yeah.
that's just my,
You could even put 2-inch rule taped over the date on the sign.
You can do that.
Get some duct tape.
That is the only fixture.
How long does this take? Do we need?
Oh, I should be able to have it for the next meeting. I'd bring it back here. Take a look.
Okay. Well, I mean, April 1st is going to be here pretty soon too, so I don't know that we need to be.
I mean, in all reality, you're going to, if you bring this back to the committee of the whole at the next meeting, that's the March 7, and if you act on it at the council meeting, that's March 21, and if there's still snow on the ground on March 21, everybody's gonna be unhappy. So, I mean, but I would prefer that as long as we're talking about it now, let's get it done.
I agree, but there's no race for time right now. We're gonna. If it takes an extra 2 weeks to do, then we're still okay. I'd rather almost kind of reset the rules for next winter as
Yep.
opposed to changing something
Yep.
midwinter, so. I guess if you want to bring it back, whatever you have drafted at the next meeting, we can look at that and
Draft.
think about it, and then also have to deal with the signage issue as far as how many signs there are in town, how many lots that this is going to affect too, so.
And so we'd be looking not to make this effective this season.
I think we should wait till next winter season personally, just to make it clear. Then we can get the word out in the paper and on the city website. Council have any more on this?
No.
Okay, we'll see what you have in 2 weeks then, Paula, Committee of the Whole. And then on to number 13, which is a property maintenance team update. We've tabled this for the last couple meetings, just basically an update from Patrick and staff on how they've been addressing these issues.
Yeah, really my goal here was to just let you in on what has been happening on the staff level. As you all remember at the listening session, there was issues and questions raised about enforcing property maintenance. So what we've been doing is reconvening a property maintenance group. The relevant staff talk about different open cases and determine proper steps to ensure that complaints are looked into and addressed. We've been meeting on a monthly basis, and I include a spreadsheet, and I think this is a couple of weeks maybe out of date, as we're going to meet this week. But we go through them all until, the property is considered, case closed, so to speak. We want to, just make people aware that this is the case for these issues now, and I wanted to put that in front of you for discussion or questions or anything, any kind of reaction that you might have to it.
Any questions on this?
I just like that you did revive this group. I think it's really important to address these issues, and specifically, with blighting, lawnmowers and whatever in yards. I mean, this is good work, and we should continue down that path. Do it next team.
One comment I have, I guess, is I'm glad that this is up and running and that we're dealing with these issues especially after the last listening session we had, where I think we heard this as a common theme, is the actual process of the property complaint. I can understand, it's best to have someone fill out a complaint form, but at what point is the city actively engaged in this? And when is the person, or I feel like there's a way.
I think it's a public interest as opposed to an individual property owner issue is what we're kind of getting to.
Yeah, that's my concern, is that when there's a clear violation on a property, does it take someone to spur that whole thing, to fill out a complaint, to say, here's my name, here's my address, I don't like this, and then the city goes in and says, yep, there's a violation here. It's a zoning violation or a safety violation. And then the city gets involved. I just wish there was some form of discretion to say, okay, we've got this, but also not allowing an arena for anybody to look for anything they possibly could because they're bored, to create all sorts of complaints that maybe don't exist. There's things that are in my backyard that nobody would complain about, but there's things maybe in my front yard that everybody could see that could be a legitimate complaint, and I think that's one concern that I have. Paul, you want to?
Whenever you have a topic like this, you have to be very careful, because if the city takes responsibility for trying to enforce all of this, then basically that's going to be a full-time job for about 4 people. I mean, in all seriousness, if you tried to really apply the ordinances strictly to everybody, the city has a role, and if they see something obvious, they need to act on it, and they can do that on their own. Private citizens, you have to be a little bit careful with that, because you don't want private citizens using the property maintenance ordinance as a sword against their neighbor just because they're ticked at their neighbor. So there's a fine line in both of those instances as to exactly how this should be operated. And what we've done so far with the property maintenance team is we require, if a private citizen is going to make a complaint, we require them to fill out the form, file the form, and sign the form. And that basically is step one in the investigation process, because if it's the building inspector or the police department who is going to be doing the investigation, that's their first call. Somebody has to sign the complaint so that, if you find yourself in a courtroom, you actually had a complainant to begin with. So we have had anonymous complaints, including one recently that we'll probably talk about at our next meeting, that I don't know if we'll do anything with, because if you don't sign it, why should we give it any weight or credence? But you do have to be, it's a tough call, and you do have to tread lightly in some cases, but the city does have the right and does have the ability to act independently, and then also act on private property owners' complaints.
Is there anybody at the city that's actively like, DPW drives by a home and sees, garbage in the front yard or whatever, a tree falling in the front yard or whatever it is, are they required as like on the staff level to report that to their supervisor?
I don't think required is the correct term, but I do think that, well, I know that they do on occasion. Davis has brought several quote-unquote dangerous tree issues forward. And of course, he's responsible for the snow and the ice on the sidewalk, all of those issues, which is a whole different set of ordinances, but it also kind of falls under the same heading. Is anybody charged with that? I'd say that answer is probably no, but it's available.
Andy, I could say there was one instance when I observed something myself, so I brought it to the group and we took it, and because I think, as we were talking about discretion and enforcement, I think if you see something popping up, if there's an opportunity to educate someone before it gets out of hand, saves them a lot of headache. I think in that case that I was talking about, that we kind of had it off a bigger issue by doing it that way. So, I mean, it's hard. If I'm going off to the recycling center or something and I see something, I'm not going to turn around and say, well, I got to wait for a private citizen to complain.
Right,
So-
and that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we have we have people on the street every day. I just didn't know how proactive they were. Like, hey, I noticed this. Should I report that to Davis or to Dan or whoever or whatever?
Yeah.
So that was my.
If things
concern.
are seen out in the field, we would want to hear about them, and we've got a group now that's looking at these things and trying to determine the best course of action.
Okay.
Any other questions from council on this?
No, just to clarify though, right, at this point, we don't have to have a private citizen complaint to take action on the, right.
All right, thanks for the update. Unless there's anything else, we'll move on to number 14, which is a review consideration of work hours for James Street construction project. Patrick, I think you outlined it pretty well in here. I think this came up during our postmortem meeting
did.
from Jason
Yeah.
as well about a couple of opportunities that may have been missed there without having the discretion or having to run through a city council meeting and make decisions. So I'm in favor of this proposal. Obviously, if there's work schedule that can be a little bit more efficient or something, whether everything else that you should have the discretion of just communicating with council to say, this is what I've decided and here's why, keep us on track. I think that's.
And you've always got the ability to ask questions about any decisions made in that regard, and as I said, the common sense would be the theme, so.
Yeah. I think Jason had outlined a scenario where the pavers would have been available on a Saturday or something like that, and there was just no time to go through and get approval. So I think that flexibility is
Yeah, we didn't
gonna
have a
be
council meeting.
correct.
Yeah.
So I think it's just communication, and it's a big project. We want to keep
Yeah.
things online and on time. So does anyone have any questions, comments about this one?
I agree with it 100%.
Okay, appreciate that.
All right, I guess do we really need to take any official action on this? This is just acknowledging that we're going to let Patrick take care of business, and
If you want to, you can, but I don't think you really need to.
anyone see the need to bring this forward for another? We're good here? All
Yeah,
right.
we have an understanding.
You have our verbal handshake then, Patrick.
Good.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, we're adjourned.